2022, and this meeting of the District of Columbia State Board of Education is now called to order. This working session is being held virtually this month and streamed live on the State Board's YouTube page for members of the public to view and attend. The State Board plans to resume full in-person meeting postures starting in September, and I'm excited to share more about that with members in just a moment. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. Mr. Ju, please call the roll.
Representative Bernstad. Representative Bernstad. Representative Gasoy. Representative Gasoy. Representative Chang.
Present.
Representative Wattenberg.
Present.
Representative O'Leary.
Here.
Representative Parker.
Present.
Representative Sutter.
Present.
Representative Thompson. Representative Thompson.
Oh, present.
Representative Reed.
Present.
And Representative Patterson.
Present.
Madam President, you do have quorum.
A quorum has been determined and the State Board will proceed now with our meeting. Welcome members to our August 3rd working session of the State Board. Thank you all for your willingness to attend virtually. We had members in various places this month, as well as staff members in various places. So I'm appreciative of technology that allows us to meet in this way. Can folks hear me?
No.
Okay, it sounds like folks can hear me. Representative O'Leary, maybe volume on your computer?
I'm sure it's not my, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, you just sound faint.
Okay, I will do my best to speak clearly. I want to share a few updates to kick off our evening together. First, I want to share our thanks to Kevin LaMonica, Giselle Miranda, and Susie Schlossberg, whose policy fellowships with the State Board will all end during the month of August. We're incredibly grateful for the work you all have done as policy fellows, for keeping us in the loop on the goings on, both in DC education and across the nation with the SBOE updates, for your thoughtful memos and work with committees. Truly, none of us could do this work without you. So we really appreciate all the time and talents you have given to the board during your fellowship. Thank you for being with us. I want to provide an update to the membership about the ED job search. So we did have a total of 189 applicants. 21 of those applicants were deemed qualified based on their education and experience. I'm incredibly grateful to Caitlin on our staff who took the time to go through all 189 resumes and the cover letters that we did receive from applicants to let us know who met the qualifications and expectations of the board. We shared that update with the admin committee, and we worked out the next step in the hiring process, which, as you all know from the hiring document that we've circulated, is a writing task. It was determined that we would create a writing task that was short enough to provide to all 21 applicants. So all 21 applicants were provided with that writing task on Monday afternoon, and they have until Friday to complete it. 5 of the top scoring respondents from that round will move on to the next round. And the scoring will be done by Caitlin on our staff, Vice President Thompson, and myself. For any places where we do not concur on scoring, we'll bring back those questions to the admin committee, and we'll be providing the admin committee with updates on the process as we continue to go through. We have not yet made any other modifications to the hiring process document, so we will certainly keep the full board apprised if anything changes, and all of that will go through the admin committee. But for now, things are proceeding apace. We're excited to keep you all posted on the folks who advanced from the writing task. And I'm truly thrilled that we've had so many qualified folks interested in serving as executive director for the State Board. So more to come on that soon. We'll be talking more about FY22 spending updates during the admin committee report. So I'm going to really defer to Vice President Thompson on that. But we will talk tonight with the board about where we stand with spending of our FY22 budget to make sure that we are thoughtfully expending the board's budget on the work of committees and the priorities of the board. Tonight, we'll be talking about our FY24 budget. And before you know it, we'll be in FY23. So lots and lots of budget talk on tonight's agenda. As a reminder, after tonight's meeting, the state board goes into sort of its summer light posture. Our staff is working on that posture as well. So they have Friday afternoons after 2 p.m. We've encouraged them not to schedule any meetings, and we ask our members not to request our staff after 2 p.m. on Fridays for the remainder of the month of August. Many committees are choosing not to meet in August to give both members and staff a little leisure time during the month, because before you know it, we'll be back for the start of the school year 22-23 with lots of business before the board, lots of activity in all of our wards. So after tonight, we go on that summer light posture, and we'll return together for our September working session on September 7th. One more update before we talk about the in-person posture starting in September. I have heard that park results are forthcoming. I know they'll be making their way to LEAs in the next week or two, and I am hearing that the end of August is when a public release of those park scores will come out. So I'm hoping we get more specifics on a date soon. I've heard a few different dates circulating, but as soon as I know more about that, I will let the entire board know. Please do keep an eye on your email during that summer light posture so that we can make sure we communicate to members when a press conference will happen, when the state superintendent's office will announce the results of park. So September, we are coming back together in person. As you know, we came back together in person for working sessions, and that had been going pretty well. We were meeting in the Marion Barry Jr. building on the 11th floor in our conference room, but our public meetings continued to be in a fully virtual posture. We reached out to the mayor's team and asked whether the executive was still using the old council chambers. They are breaking down their work in the old council chambers this month, and we will be back on our dais for the first time since March of 2020, really February of 2020, come September 21st for our public meeting. I'm very excited for our members who are in their second year of their term to join us on the dais for the first time. And we'll have more updates on the details of that move back into the chambers from our interim executive director in just a moment. So let me turn to interim executive director Alex Ju for his report, including some updates about that return to our chambers. Mr. Ju.
Thank you so much, President Sutter. I will start with just a piggyback off of what President Sutter was sharing related to the old council chambers. In addition to us being back in person in September, I have received confirmation that the work and updates that former executive Hayworth had been working with DGS on in August of 2021 are going to be complete. And so we will have some upgrades in the chamber as well. What those exact upgrades and equipment are, I'm not entirely sure to date, but I will be getting a tour of the space in early September to make sure that everything is ready to go for that September public meeting. So again, to echo the sentiment of President Sutter, I'm very excited to have all of you in person and to welcome you all to the dais. Other updates that I wanted to provide, members should have received an email from me probably sometime mid last month related to the final selections of our student representatives for school year 2022-23. So I'm very excited about the 4 students that will be joining us. Representative Bernstead actually will be continuing on. So I'm very, very excited about that. And she'll be joined by 3 other students who we will all get to meet and engage with starting in September. Again, just echoing what President Sutter said about our hybrid work posture for staff, I will not reiterate. Members and staff should have also received a doodle poll for a staff and member informal gathering sometime during the month of August. I welcome all members to complete that. And then finally, the last piece of information that I wanted to share with you all was a project that Malayo is working on for staff, for current members, and for any new members and staff that will be joining us in the future. We're working on a kind of an FAQ document, if you will, that members and staff can use with kind of the most commonly asked questions of our members, of our staff. And so I welcome you all, at least at this time, if you want to drop things in the chat, follow up. We'll follow up via email as well, or if you'd like to share ideas very quickly. But we're looking to kind of identify what are some of the most frequently asked questions that you get from your constituents that you think we all should be able to kind of answer very, very quickly. So we're working on that project and more information to come on that. And I do think that is everything I have for the interim executive director report, Madam President. Unless there are any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ju. Members, are there questions for Mr. Ju about aspects of his report? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Ju. We're going to come back to you in just a minute. So members, the first thing before us on our working session agenda tonight is a discussion of the fiscal year 2024 budget and requests for enhancements. To any members of the public who are watching, the way the district's budget cycle works for the state board, we have to start talking now about our fiscal year 2024 budget. Fiscal year 2024 will begin October 1st, 2023. We start talking now about our need for appropriations, which we present to the mayor, and any enhancements from what we currently have in our budget that we would like to add to make it possible for the board to extend and improve its work on behalf of the residents of the District of Columbia. So we start that conversation now, even though this is more than a year in advance of when that budget year will begin. So I'm going to turn it to Mr. Ju to lead a discussion related to this enhancement request. Mr. Ju's also been working with our sister offices, the Office of the Ombudsman and the Office of the Student Advocate, to develop our initial FY24 need for appropriations. Our hope is to vote on this need for appropriations for FY24 at our September 21st public meeting. So we will be able to talk about this again at our September 7th working session, but we want to get this conversation started now so that we're in a very good place to vote on it in September. Mr. Ju, go ahead and begin when you're ready. Thank
you, President Sutter. So I wanted to start this discussion kind of from a couple of places. One, the state board, in addition to what President Sutter said, we have both a personnel budget as well as a non-personnel budget. Our personnel budget is pretty much set, and there are some calculations that are done by our CFO to project out what personnel costs will be in a future fiscal year. The area that the board has a little bit more discretion on that we need to talk through are items related to our enhancement requests and our non-personnel items. There are some non-personnel items that I'm still working to get a better idea on related to what their costs will be in fiscal year 24. Some of you may recall that former Executive Hayworth had noted some increases in contractual services of the state board, particularly related to our technology expenditures with the Office of the Chief Technology Officer, as well as some other IT assessments. And so I'm looking into that. And there are some other contractual services that we'll want to identify an appropriate amount of funds to expend. I know that in the past, the state board has been interested in utilizing various researchers or contractors for particular projects. And so we'll need to assess, what the appropriate dollar amount will be for that line item. But what I wanted to spend most of this discussion on right now was related to our enhancement requests, because that is the area where I think the state board has the most opportunity for advocating for what we think we need beyond our need for appropriations. And if you all will recall from the previous fiscal year's budget, FY23, I think we had an enhancement list of about maybe 7 to 10 requests. We were very fortunate to have 2 of those requests actually met. And one of those is our education standards specialist position, which will be coming on board at the start of fiscal year 23. I imagine the Education Standards Committee and the Admin Committee will have more to share on that later. And then another was some constituent service funds for each member to help do the work in their particular wards. And so I know those were two enhancement requests that were met last year. At this time, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull up our enhancement proposal that was submitted for fiscal year 23 so that all members can kind of see what enhancement requests are still outstanding from the previous fiscal year, as well as get an idea of like what types of enhancement requests we might wish to make moving forward. So if you give me 1 second to pull up that document, that would be greatly appreciated. I will also note for members of the public, the document that I am pulling up is on Assembly. And so it can be accessed that way as well. Oops. All right. I do apologize if this is a little bit small to see for folks. I will try to zoom in and make it as large as possible for members of the public who might be watching, but also for our elected representatives who are looking at it on their Zoom screen. You will see the items in red are the enhancement requests from fiscal year 23 that were added into our budget. So those are not things that we want to consider now. Another thing that I should note about this document is from fiscal year 23, these are ordered in our agency priority. And so last year, our #1 priority, which was related to our education standards specialist position, was met, as well as our #4 priority. The other enhancements that we did have in fiscal year 23, or requests, I should say, one was related to a community engagement position. For members of the board who I think have been with us for more than a couple of years, might recall that this is an enhancement request that we've made for some years in an effort for the state board to be able to do more community engagement work and constituent facing work in the city. So that is what the community engagement one is. It was an enhancement request for citywide research and reporting. And that would be related to work that the state board had hoped to undertake related to educational issues of interest to district families. In the past, we have also asked for a COLA increase for the state board members' stipends. There was an enhancement request also from the state board related to office space too. The final two enhancement requests on this table are related to items for the Office of the Ombudsman and the Office of the Student Advocate. As President Sutter shared with all of you, I have been working very closely with Chief Student Advocate Davis, as well as Ombudsman of Public Education Hayes on their respective budgets, and they will share with us their respective enhancement requests for our consideration at the September public meeting. But at this time, I did want to open up the floor for a little bit of discussion related to enhancement requests. My first question would be related to the 4 outstanding enhancement requests from FY23. Which of those members think are worthy of making the ask again for FY24? And then my second question would be related to any enhancement requests that the state board feels might not have been included in FY23, but might be worth including for a future fiscal year. And I will stop sharing my screen at this time. I will reshare it if it's needed at a later time. Again, this document is on Assembly, and I will look for hands from members if there is any discussion related to this topic. Representative Wattenberg.
So I will just raise this as much for everybody else's information. There was for a number of years, I think prior to the pandemic, maybe even leading into the pandemic, Councilwoman Shea moved some money to the board to conduct research. We did the research, the original research on teacher turnover based on that. And maybe some other work as well. I can't remember. So I want to say two things. One, I think having that kind of research budget is super important. It has really allowed us, as much as on anything, to really sort of shift the conversation on things and get new facts out into the public. And second, if it's not possible to do it through the enhancements themselves, it can be possible to do it through a council person's office. So I just urge people to think about that in both ways.
Thank you, Representative Wattenberg. And I will note, I'm still trying to work to understand the complexities of the state board's budget and the budget process in general. I do believe there is a line item in our budget related to contractual services that we can expend on research. That is something that would be included in our need for appropriations. Again, I think the enhancement request would probably be on top of that initial need for appropriations. President Sutter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Jew. And thank you, Representative Wattenberg, for that reminder on how the board sort of really expanded its impact on research. I think that the community engagement enhancement is one I would support us adding in again. It's become a critical piece of the way the board works in the world. We have a lot of presence that we've been making sure is felt at community events. I'm thrilled that we always have the Student Advocates Office and the Ombudsperson coming with us to events, being present at parent engagement events, being present at Open Streets events. I loved seeing Vice President Thompson's pics with the student advocate this past weekend in Ward 7. But I want to make sure that our board also has access to the capacity it needs to do community engagement with members and on behalf of the board's priorities. I'm thinking about the fall engagement activity we're about to start discussing later in the agenda, and about how much capacity that takes from our current staff. So I think having a person on staff who really could take point on that work, as well as to potentially support our sister offices, would be critical. So that's an enhancement from the past that I would like to see us put forth again. And perhaps, since our ed standards one was ranked first and was accepted, perhaps even ranked first in our requests. So I'll put that out there.
Thank you very much, President Sutter. Vice President Thompson.
I actually raised my hand for a similar reason. I wanted to talk about the opportunity for an outreach and engagement person. I've been really pleased with the amount of work we've been able to do this, I guess, almost roughly 18 months since I've been on the board around engagement and outreach. I'm excited that we're planning a big engagement event this year. I think I said when I joined the board, that was one of the muscles that I'm hoping we build. And I think we especially saw through, well, we're still in the pandemic, but throughout the pandemic, people have been reaching out to us, and we just need more capacity around that. I think this is an opportunity to just be a little more proactive and actually get even closer to the ground, given we are the only current body who is elected that represents our constituents' education interests. So it's a muscle we're developing across a couple other, like stretched across, but I do think it's something we would benefit us to lean into a bunch.
Thank you, Vice President Thompson. Representative O'Leary.
I couldn't really see it when you posted it, but I did pull it up on Assembly. I know no one believes that, but I did it. And you said that the redlined items are the ones that have been approved?
So the redlined items, Representative O'Leary, so the document you're first looking at, that is from fiscal year 23. So that's last year's document.
Right.
The red items are ones that were enhancements that were included in the mayor's budget for our office. And so those are not enhancement requests that we would need to make again.
That's what I thought.
I will, just one point of clarification, and I do need to check on this. I do need to confirm on whether or not the $9,000 for constituent kind of engagement and services at the member level, $1,000 per member, was a one-time enhancement or if that was a continuing enhancement. So I will need to get clarity on that. I am nearly certain that it is a continuing item though.
But the education standards person, is that a recurring part of the budget?
Yes, so that will be a new staff position starting in FY23 and an individual who will be funded through future fiscal years.
Oh, good. And I just want to vote along with my comrades on the board that we need more community engagement money. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative O'Leary.
I appreciate you clearing up for all of us, Representative O'Leary, what is recurring and what is one time. I think that too, to Mr. Jew's point, is a complexity of our budgeting process. When we get an enhancement that is a one time, or as Representative Wattenberg noted, when we get an obligation of funding provided by a council member like Representative Che did for us in the research piece, that was a one-time funding that then had to be requested annually versus the staff member, which is recurring. I would also appreciate just confirmation that budget for members to spend on outreach and engagement is recurring. And I think we probably should talk about, I guess this is a note for a future meeting, we should probably talk about come the start of FY23, how that money will be allocated in this particular year, since some current members will be ending terms, and how that funding ought to be allocated when it's a cross-term year. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense to me, President Sutter. And I imagine the way that something like that could work is I will use an example that I'm pulling out of the air. And so if this is irrelevant to all of you as members and elected officials, please stop me. But say you have a MailChimp subscription that you use to send a constituent newsletter to. I would imagine that the state board would probably be able to utilize the $1,000 that has been allocated towards you as a member to help you pay for that subscription. And so I imagine we probably would just do that on our own through our own purchase and purchase card process. And so that would be an expense that you would not have to incur on your own personal card.
Yeah, no, totally. I think what I'm thinking about is, I'll give a specific example. There are several members on the board whose terms are up come December 2022. And so the question is, if it's $1,000 per member per fiscal year, should a current member whose term is up in December be given sort of a prorated amount so that if they are not the member that sits in that seat, come January 2023, there is still funding left on the fiscal year for the member who occupies that ward-based seat.
Yeah, I think that's an appropriate. I personally believe that would be appropriate, right? Okay. Whether of the 1,000, it's $250 or $300 for the remaining 3 to 4 months, and then that remaining $700 to $750 being for a potentially new incoming member. Yes.
Let's put that on discussion for our September working session so that we can make sure that folks are clear on that before the new fiscal year starts. Because I do think it would be good for us to get on the same page about that and make sure that any new board-based members who join the board in January aren't left lacking in that fiscal year funding. Members, are there other questions or thoughts about enhancements? Again, we'll have time to talk about it at our September working session, but it would be good for us to have a sense of where we're headed before that. Any new enhancements we didn't talk about in prior years that are on your mind that would enhance the work of the board that we should ask for?
And if not at this time, members are welcome to follow up with me or President Sutter or Vice President Thompson about any enhancement requests that you think we should include. Again, this is just the start of the conversation and bringing it forward to the board. As President Sutter noted, we do have September's working session to discuss this as well before we actually vote on it at the end of September. But just by way of process, we are bringing forward this topic at this time.
All right, well, let's do this then. Let's say if folks have additional ideas, let's go ahead and start circulating those via email. We'll have this on the agenda again for the September 7th working session, where we can discuss any ideas that have been circulated via email. Maybe your summer light time gives you some brain break and some thoughts about what you'd like to see the board request in our FY24 budget. So we'll go ahead and put together a list. We'll bring this back for discussion at our September 7th working session. And Mr. Ju, thank you for all that you've collected already from the notes from this part of the discussion thus far.
All right, thank you very much, President Sutter and members.
All right, we will move on to our second discussion, which is about FY22 funds that we're expending on a big and important engagement opportunity this fall. So in fall 2021, the state board hosted 2 successful in-person engagement sessions that welcomed over 60 stakeholders to share their opinions and thoughts on the work of the state board. We had the opportunity to have folks talk about governance. They talked about the Essa amendment and the school report card and the visualization of information on that, and social studies standards were part of that discussion as well. This September, the state board is currently planning 1 engagement session, a large one, we hope, to discuss, share, and get input on our current work streams. Those will include board governance, standards and literacy, family engagement standards, and next steps related to Essa and accountability. Mr. Ju and Ms. Schlossberg, I think you're going to lead this decision on the state board's forthcoming engagement sessions. Is that right?
Yes, I was going to provide some additional updates to members related to it, and then yes, lead the discussion. Great.
Then go ahead and begin when you're ready, and we'll see where we are and what information we need from members to continue to proceed in planning.
All right, great. So some additional information for members. So the plan and hope is to host this fall engagement session, which we're kind of coining as a back to school engagement session in September following Labor Day. At this time, we're considering one of 3 Saturdays, either Saturday, September 10th, Saturday, September 17th, or Saturday, September 24th. I do recognize that all of those dates may not be, or one of those dates may not be perfect for everybody here, but we do hope that, whichever date is chosen, that a number of you will be able to attend and support in the work. I will be turning it over to Ms. Schlossberg in a second to kind of talk us through some of the work that she's been doing related to identifying a site that we might be able to host our engagement session at. But before we do that, I did want to provide members with one piece of information that I think will really help to draw more people into this engagement session, but also just generally, increase attendance and participation of who can attend. We are also working to identify childcare services that can be at the event in conjunction with the engagement sessions. So if a family member or parent would traditionally be unable to attend because of lack of childcare, we are hoping to be able to provide that on site. And so just to let members know, I've already been in contact with 2 potential vendors about that to kind of get an idea of what something like that could cost and to see if that's an actual possibility for us. But that is one thing that we're working on. The other thing that Ms. Schlossberg and I will kind of next go to is related to identifying a physical site for our engagement. At this time, we have kind of cast our net pretty far and wide, but with some boundaries. We are looking at a variety of libraries and recreation centers in wards 5, 7, and 8 primarily, places that are transit accessible, meaning probably anywhere from less than a quarter of a mile from a major metro stop. They likely have some parking on site, whether that's a significant parking lot or a good amount of street parking, and even a possible green space that is not far by too, such that we needed to utilize that. At this time, there are a couple of places where we actually have soft holds. And so I do want to share those with you all right now if there's some reactions on that. And then we'll do some additional follow-up. So there is right now one soft hold at MLK Library. Again, that is not in wards 5, 7, or 8, but it was a space that we did utilize for our fall engagement last year. It worked well, and we do have a soft hold on that space for Saturday, September 17th. And we would be utilizing the same conference room spaces, those 4 or 5 rooms to do breakout sessions. Ms. Schlossberg, can you share with members of the board other places and venues that you've been looking into and provide them with a kind of overview of what some options might look like at this time?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alex. So I can give you guys a quick overview of some of the other facilities that we were looking at. So we wanted to find library or recreation spaces within wards 5, 7, and 8. And so right now we have a soft hold on the Lamont Riggs Library, and they also have a meeting room capacity of up to 100 people. And so we have that currently placed for the 10th. We also have a soft hold on the space at the Southwest Library, which also has capacity of up to 75 people for September 17th. And then we also have a hold on September 10th for the Benning Dorothy Library. And so these are all great spaces, except for that they tend to have restrictions around food and noise. Since they are still library spaces, participants will have to be masked up the entire time. And they only allow food outside of the physical library. There are some ways to get around this, but that is a potential barrier. And then in terms of some of the parks and recreation facilities, the permitting process does require us to give them at least a 14-day notice, but they do ask for up to 30 days if you really want to secure the space. And it appears that most of the multi-purpose conference room spaces within some of the DPR facilities that we were looking at within wards 5, 7, and 8 already have those September Saturdays reserved. So we are having some more difficulties with that, but as Alex said, we do have a couple spaces that we already have soft holds on, and they're all metro accessible. I've verified that they have parking spaces either on site or in addition to on-site parking, they also have accessible street parking. So we're also reaching out to Eastern High School to see if we could use their gym for a bigger space. So we're just waiting to hear back from a couple of places, but those are our updates. And we'd love your input in terms of what facility might serve our purposes best.
Thank you so much, Susie. So yeah, I would love to hear some member reactions to some of those sites that were shared that we do have soft holds on right now, if anything really stood out to folks. And then I think after this discussion, we are going to do a pivot to kind of talking more about the format of the actual engagement session. Representative Bernstead, I see your hand.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I'm on my way home, so I was keeping my camera off. But I have a question not about the location specifically, but about the event itself. Would now be a good time to ask that?
Yeah, you can ask. We could definitely entertain it now, and if it makes sense to table it for 5 minutes, that's also okay too.
Okay, I wasn't at the last fall engagement session because I wasn't on the board, so I'm just not sure exactly what it is. Are we having general engagement, or is it engagement over a specific issue? And if so, what's that specific issue?
That is a great question, Representative Bernstead. And so just to remind members of the public and the board, the previous fall engagement sessions were such that they were held in person. There was one held at Deanwood Recreation Center in Ward 7, one was held at MLK Library in Ward 2. They each had 3 sessions, and each session was on a kind of current topic that the board was discussing. And so it gave the public an opportunity to provide feedback and engage with board members on a current topic of the board. And so what the topics will be at the September engagement sessions, I don't think we know them exactly. I think we have a general idea of what they will be. And it seems like we'll probably have 4 different breakouts, but we're gonna kind of move to that discussion piece after this portion related to spaces.
Okay, and then I had just one comment. This isn't related to spaces specifically, but if we're inside, I do hope that we can have a mask requirement. I know that masks aren't required in DC government buildings anymore, but with the recent surge of COVID and with monkeypox becoming a thing, I hope that is something that we can consider, but I don't know if that's in our control.
Thank you, Representative Bernstein.
Mr. Chair, I'll just add one more piece of commentary. Representative Bernstein, one way that I think about the last fall engagement was it was a little bit of like a mini conference. So we had an opening session, we introduced the sessions, folks then went to their breakouts, and then we were able to provide food and drink for folks to have at the event as well. So it was sort of like a little mini conference with multiple sessions, and folks got to pick 2 of the 3 that were offered.
Okay, got it. Thank you for that clarification, just because I know I wasn't here, but I didn't know if anyone, yeah, thank you.
Representative O'Leary.
Hold on, I just moved myself out. If we are going to have a meeting in, let's say, mid-September, then we need to make a quick decision about where and how to get the information out to people, because that would be it's only a month away, and how are we going to communicate the information? We don't have a public meeting this month, so this is our last chance to talk to the public live before the beginning of September, and the meeting will be soon thereafter. How are we going to get the information out?
Representative O'Leary, I think we'll work to get the information out via our newsletters, via social media, and if, posting flyers and things like that in libraries and other community spaces, and also probably leaning on many of you to share out information with your constituents too. But I do hear what you're saying with respect to identifying a date and a location. And I would be really hopeful that by the end of this discussion, maybe we can land on a date that we all think might be best, and maybe any locations that, of the ones that we have soft holds on, that we think would, potentially be the most ideal, so we can secure that space next week.
Is it possible that we can plug into the back to school push from the state superintendent and from the mayor, so that our session would be advertised every time they talked about anything that was going to happen going back to school?
I'm certainly happy for us to ask that folks mention and help us amplify our event. I think the critical thing we've got to decide tonight is twofold. We've got to decide where we as a board think it is most appropriate to physically hold the event. And then we've got to talk about the content of it so that we can start to put together a flyer that we can use for all those things, including providing it to the state superintendent and to the deputy mayor's team. We've been helpful to them in advertising events they're holding. So I'm hopeful that we can ask the same back.
Great.
Representative Wattenberg.
Yeah, I just want to put in a big plug for trying to be able to serve a dinner or serve serious refreshments. And I realize that's not just an issue of the venue, but I think it has something to do with our funding. And I just want to put out there, I mean, if you organize or you do outreach, one of the things you learn, and I think we all know it just based on our experience, if you want people to come, food is really, really important to create. I mean, people like it. It creates a nice atmosphere. People come back, it's social, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we really need to figure out how to do that. And it may require some, I don't know if it's, I've never quite understood why it is we can't use our money on refreshments, but I think we need to revisit that and see if there's a way to do something about that. I mean, DCPS has food, other people have food. Maybe some other community partner can pitch in. Anyway, so I want to raise that in general. It's partly related to the rule. And then if it's possible to do it this fall, I would suggest one of the venues where we can have food.
Mr. Ju, we had food at both Deanwood and at the MLK Library last time, correct? That's my recollection, that there were like muffins and whatnot for breakfast at MLK, and there were sub sandwiches at Deanwood.
That is correct, President Sutter. And so it is my hope and understanding that we would also seek a food waiver to make sure that there were substantial, there was a food option for folks attending. And I will also say, and this is my oversight, but the event that we're hoping to host in September would likely be a late morning, early afternoon event that would include some sort of lunch option. And what that looks like, whether it's a boxed lunch or whether it's something else, but it is our hope that we would do that. And another oversight on my part that I should have said at the beginning is I have also been in communication with both the Ombudsman and the Office of the Student Advocate about ways that we're going to be able to integrate both their offices into this event.
Just a point of clarification on the sites. We had at the MLK Library in the fall food in one of the spaces. So it sounds like at the MLK Library, food is not an issue, but at the local library sites, food is prohibited. Is that accurate, Ms. Thosberg?
Yes, based on my phone conversations with Lamond, Dorothy, and also the Southwest Library, they made it clear that food would not be allowed inside the building, but the Southwest Library said that people will occasionally have events where they serve food right outside because there's a recreational space, there are benches. So that could be a workaround, but yes, the local libraries did indicate that they didn't want food in the building.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Wattenberg, did you have any other questions?
Oh, you mean because my hand's up?
Yeah, just wanted to make sure. Okay, no worries. Representative Reed.
Good evening. I would like to offer either adding a virtual conference option, like adding just one session that we do completely virtually, or if there's a capacity issue, maybe eliminating the MLK Library day and then doing one just virtually. And I raised that because I remember when we did both last time in person, that was a consideration that some folks were hoping for. And with the date being in September and our current COVID rates, it just might be worth doing something virtually. That's it.
Representative Reed, I just want to clarify for all members, we are only talking at the moment about one in-person site for the fall. So the 3 dates were of like one of the 3 rather than all 3. So I think the question is, if we did a virtual, would we do it on the same day or would we do it on another day virtually with one of these held locations on the 3 Saturdays we talked about?
Gotcha. I thought that we were doing like how we did last time. We did 2 sessions. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, some way we can do a virtual component, either the separate or a hybrid while one, concurrently, but I know that's more tech, just as a consideration.
I appreciate that note, Representative Reed. And I think, there might be some opportunities such that, we figure out a way that we could at least stream something live or something like that, at least one or a couple of the sessions as they're happening concurrently. But I do think that's a good note related to virtual. Vice President Thompson.
I like Eastern for the following reasons. You can have food at Eastern. It's actually a really pretty space. It's pretty central to the city. Of course, it's in Ward 7 now. It also has parking and is metro accessible. I think a lot of times we either go with parking or metro accessible. And I think having a venue that has both is really important. I am not concerned with it not being east of the river because I'm going to be honest, I don't think people realize that it's really hard to get around within east of the river. Oftentimes it's easier for us to get to a central location than it is to get from one side of our ward to another, or like for me to get to the ARC if I don't drive. So I'm gonna put a plug in for Eastern since that's the space we have a soft hold on, and sharing Representative O'Leary's concern that we're about a month out. So I want us to stop looking for space and make a decision. And I know Eastern can hold 250 people. And to Representative Wattenberg's point, we can have food, which has always been planned.
Vice President Thompson, just a point of clarification. Unfortunately, we do not have a soft hold on Eastern.
Well, we're failing. We're failing. We got to get one.
But we are working with them. I know Susie and I have submitted the initial request to utilize the space. And so if we might be able to lean on both Representative, or I guess President Sutter, as well as Vice President Thompson, seeing if we can't make something happen at Eastern, that might be very, very helpful too.
We'll collaborate, see what we can do.
Okay, so it does sound like I saw your comment in the chat, Representative Wattenberg, related to Eastern too. And so we'll see if we can't make some more headway on that space. Representative Chang. Representative Chang,
So many of you know that one of the favorite teams that I respect at the DC Public Library is the outreach team led by Tracy Sumler, which expanded when MLK was under renovation. And one of the mandates of the team was to locate who and where in the city are folks not engaging with the public library, and to deliberately go to the spaces with the least engagement to customize better resources for those populations and to make library resources more accessible. And the question that she always asks her team, which I think might be relevant in us trying to decide between the soft holds, is where do we have the least engagement, either coming to testify at our meetings or participating in our events. Could be one question that could help us decide among these, because inevitably wherever that location is, you'll pull most from the immediate vicinity to attend, right? So I appreciate the push for Eastern, because it is, I mean, transportation is critical, but even with all of the resources and investments made in MLK, right, as our central branch, the usage is still, for the most part, very local, right? So I think, you know, I support the idea of going to any of the libraries. I love the idea that we do this in a library. I think there is something we can learn from the outreach team. And regardless of which one, I do think that it puts weight on each of us to be really thoughtful about engaging our own constituents and helping them find transportation over and making the event more accessible, regardless of where it is located. But I don't know if you have that data actually just off at the top of your head, Mr. Zhu.
What data, Representative Chang?
What part of the, you know, in previous surveys that we've put out, or participants who've come to testify, constituents who've come to testify, where are we getting the least engagement?
I don't have that information right now, but I do think we probably could gather that information for you. I will say that I think if the board governance survey, which Vice President Thompson and the board governance committee is working on, shares any information related to where there's a lack of constituent voice, I do think there might be some notes on that later this evening during the board governance committee report out. But I don't have the information right now.
So what are we left with in terms of variables here? It's what I'm hearing are access to transportation. So thinking thoughtfully about which ones are closest to a metro stop or have parking. I'm thinking, I heard food, right? And I don't know which of these limits gets crossed out and do not let us have food. And then I think what I'm proposing as a third variable is just, you know, where we lowest on it, lower on engagement.
Yeah, I think that's a good third variable. What I'm hearing really clearly from folks is that we need to secure a date and location, that access to food is important. We also need to have adequate space if we're going to pursue the childcare piece, to have childcare on site. And we want to make sure that the sites are transportation accessible in all the forms. I'd also love to just check with members of those 3 Saturdays, September 10th, September 17th, or September 24th. Could you please put your first choice in the chat? We already heard from Representative Reed, her preference. I have expressed my preference for that same Saturday, the 17th. But if folks would put their preferences in the chat, just your first one, that would be great, because that I think could help our staff make an effort here. Oh, I love that, Representative Chang. Representative Chang, for folks who don't have access to the chat, noted his preference is September 10th, but there's that day is also Teachers' Day in China and Taiwan, which I love. Okay, members, keep those dates coming. To your point, Representative Chang, it sounds like we do have some ranking criteria. We've got availability of a space that is transportation accessible in all its forms. We've got ability to have food and childcare on site. And then we've got this question of where community engagement may have been lowest. I want to add, Representative Reed has asked about a virtual component or a virtual engagement event. So we will also ask the staff to take a look at that. My feeling, and I appreciate you naming it, Representative Reed, is that the tech involved in creating hybrid events at some of these spaces may be complicated, but holding a second exclusively virtual event sounds like an important thing that the board, could make space and time to do. With that in mind, Representative Chang.
An idea, since it's unlikely that all of us can make any date that's selected, if those who can't make it in person could lead the virtual part of it and have a separate room, right, that is virtual, so that we could participate even if we, one weekend I'm not in town, for example. So if we choose that weekend, I'm happy to have a conversation virtually and not have it be necessarily streamed into the event, but have it be a separate option.
Awesome. I like that suggestion. Okay, Mr. Ju, what else do you need from us in terms of getting information to make moves on a location?
So I think we are good on the location front right now. We'll continue to make some headway on this and hopefully secure a date and location by next week. Again, I will look to both Representative Sutter and Representative Thompson for assistance related to Eastern High School. I did just forward you an email communication that Ms. Schlossberg and I have had with folks at Eastern. So to the extent that you can help there would be greatly appreciated.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I think the thing I'll note again for members is just please keep an eye on your email, even as we're in summer light, because we'll make sure we communicate any details that emerge about the date and location as soon as we have them. The other thing I was thinking, as Dr. O'Leary was asking, is that the back to school events that we will all inevitably be attending and invited to, it would be great as soon as we have that location and date put together to have some sort of flyer, both virtual and real if possible, to be able to share. One thing that seems to have been super successful in some of our recent outreach is a QR code with a graphic that we can use to share with folks in our times when we're out and about in the community. I'm thinking about the back to school bash Serve Your City is having in Ward 6 on August 27th. I'd love to be able to really start to rally folks to attend our community engagement event at that. And so the ability to have both a QR code and the information to share, I think would be huge.
Great. Representative Chang, did you have another question? Okay. So I know we're approaching time for this point of the agenda, President Sutter. But the one other thing I did want members to talk through was related to what the engagement sessions might look like, or what topics we might talk about. I know President Sutter, in some of her remarks, she shared that it's likely that there will be a session on standards and literacy, one related to family engagement standards, another related to next steps on the accountability framework and school report card, and then a final one related to the board governance work, and I imagine what is coming out of the survey results. And so at this time, that is what staff have in kind of the back of our heads related to 4 kind of unique sessions, largely on those topics. And I think it will be between committee chairpersons and the staff points of contact to kind of develop the actual presentations and materials for each given session. And so I want to pause there and make sure that I'm capturing what I understand are going to be the likely 4 sessions, and see if there's any additional input or thoughts on that.
That's my understanding as well, Mr. Ju. So I want to turn to our committee chairpersons and find out if that is also where they are with this. Committee chairpersons for Ed Standards, Advocacy Outreach, Assessment Accountability, and Governance all go to have a session and to be working with your staff person to plan the content of that session. I'm seeing nodding from Dr. Reed. I got a thumbs up from Vice President Thompson. Yep, I got a nodding from Representative Chang. Dr. Patterson, how we feeling? Okay, so I think those are the 4 sessions. One question I have, and Dr. Reed, I will leave it to you if this is more appropriate to be discussed about in committee reports. I would love to hear more about the Essa family engagement piece that you are thinking about here, because I know we as a board have talked about family engagement in lots of ways, but I so appreciated that you started linking it back to the Essa standards. And I want to make sure that we all have a common understanding of how this particular piece links into Essa. So is now the right time to ask you this, or should we talk about it during committee work?
I can give a preview now if we want to do a deeper dive during the committee report. That's fine. This is actually a bit of a, I guess, relic from John Paul days, as well as Representative Gassoy, where, of course, as you know, in our bylaws or one of our documents, we're supposed to do family engagement, and we agreed to do some sort of family engagement council, but we decided as a prequel to that, having that family engagement council of like a topic that will kind of get families recruited and rallied and excited about family engagement. So between John Paul and Emily Gassoy, they came up with Essa as the what the standards say related to family engagement. And we've created like a little kind of draft presentation around those standards with like some discussion pieces within the committee. So we're hoping that will be the session. And then we also have a tool to kind of recruit people for that follow-up council piece. So we're hoping to use this engagement in September as one, getting feedback, but then also recruiting people who are interested in getting to a deeper dive on the topic.
Okay, thank you. So I know my understanding is that in Essa, the state put forth some standards and a template for LEAs to create family engagement policies. And one of the things that it sounds like we as a board are interested in is, to what extent has this happened at LEAs? How are families experiencing this requirement of LEAs, and what feedback do they have on it, so that the board can keep our eyes on this issue? One thing I'm super curious about is, like, I've never thought to look at each of our LEAs and find out, like, is there a family engagement policy? Would we easily be able to find it? Who's sort of keeping their eyes on the prize on that? Is that something that Aussie is checking on or requiring any updates on? So I'm excited about this component. I just wonder if members had any other questions about that. Great. Okay. Mr. Ju, what else do you need from us on this front?
That President Sutter, that's everything right now. I will say that tomorrow the staff are convening with the offices of the Ombudsman and the Office of Student Advocate as well to provide some updates and continue to move this work forward. And we'll keep you all apprised. And as President Sutter said, please do check your email to the extent possible during this summer light period for updates.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Ju. So I really appreciate all the work the staff has already put into this and the work that is still to come in coordinating this. The members know this, and we've shared this with the public before. As we search for our new ED, and Mr. Ju has stepped into the role of interim ED, we are essentially down a staff member. So our staff is working at max capacity and working very hard to make all this possible, because we think it's super important for the board to be able to engage with the public in this way and to do so in conjunction with the return to school. So I want to just express gratitude to our staff for all their work. I'm super hopeful that the committee chairs will be in communication with your staff members assigned to your committees so that you can get underway on what these sessions will look like. We can make sure once we've got that date ready to go on a flyer, we can also get going on preparing materials and making sure things are ready. We are going to shift now to committee reports. So as we've done in the past months, each committee chair will have about 2 minutes to report on activities from the past month. Vice President Thompson will have 10 minutes for her reports on administrative committee and education governance, because there are some substantive matters to share with members this evening. Very excited to hear about the many, many people who took the governance survey. Super fun stuff. And I am encouraging members of the public to review the committee reports that are posted on our website. I will turn now, in the order we usually go through them, to our committee chairs. So Student Advisory Committee, Representative Bernstad, anything to report?
So the Student Advisory Committee's last meeting was end of June, so we did not meet. So there's no committee report. I will note that I myself am a little confused about if there are any student representatives right now, if I've been sworn out for this term. I don't know what's happening, but I have reached out to the SAC members of next year to determine the posture of our meetings, in person, online, once a month, twice a month, all that jazz. And I hope that we can get started with SAC meetings really soon. And yeah, so no meetings, but the work is, we're working on it for next year.
I love it. Rest assured, you have not been sworn out, Representative Bernstad. You are still very much a member, and we're very excited to have you continuing on as a recurring member.
I'm very excited.
Question, Representative Chang.
Representative Bernstad, is there anything that we can help with with our constituents, with our schools, in your work?
I don't think so at this point. It's just figuring out what the incoming representatives and incoming committee members want in terms of the posture of the meeting. However, if there is something that anyone hears that they think we should address that we haven't talked about before, or that we should talk about, like, please send me an email or something saying like, hey, here's this. Or if there's anything that you want to share with the SAC, we always love having guests. And if we are back in person, we can definitely figure out like hybrid ways to have guests if y'all want to come in and share something and do that over Zoom.
Great, thank you.
All right, any other questions for Representative Bernstad? Dr. Reed?
Yes, Representative Bernstad, I'm guessing with your onboarding of new SAC members, we'll get updates about their interest in any committees and whenever that becomes available. I'm also trying to think about the timeline. Does it start in September or does it start January?
It starts in September, but so this is a distinction that I think is important. There are SAC members and there are student representatives. There are only 4 student representatives. So I could also reach out to them now and let them know, like, here are the committees. Are you interested? The members of the Student Advisory Committee who aren't representatives are actually not able to join committees, so I won't be sharing that information with them. But they should be sworn in the September public meeting, I believe.
Mr. Ju, is that accurate? We're swearing in at the September public meeting? Or are we swearing in at the September working session?
I will defer to you, President Sutter. It was my personal hope that we would swear them in at the September working session, such that their term would begin in September. It has also been past practice before COVID that students were sworn in their physical schools and classrooms. And so that might be something that we might wish to explore for this upcoming year too, President Sutter and Vice President Thompson, for one or both of you to physically swear in a student in front of their classmates too.
Oh, I actually kind of like that idea.
And I think Representative Wattenberg might be able to speak a little bit more to that at a later, to give context.
I'm seeing a note in the chat from Representative Wattenberg that says that's what we did and it was lovely. Representative Wattenberg, do you want to say more?
Just that. I actually remember swearing in Alex, and it's just nice, and people have their families and friends, and it's lovely. You get to go out and see the school, so I highly recommend it.
So I am open to that. Representative Bernstad, do you have thoughts?
No, I don't have thoughts. I mean, that sounds scary, fun, scary. This is just like a logistical question. I have to get sworn in again, right, in September, or no?
It's a second term, so I think we could swear you in again. Okay, so here's what we'll do.
I just don't know what's typical.
I think it would be great for us to swear the students in as soon as we are able. So let's plan to do that on or around the September 7th working session. I think if we could reach out to the student representatives and ask them if they would like us to swear them in at the school so that we can set dates to do that before the September 7th working session. And if folks would prefer to be sworn in at the working session, that's fine too. So Representative Bernstad, if you would prefer to keep it amongst us, we can do that. But I think if we could reach out to the student reps, ask them how they'd prefer to do it, and we can get that scheduled. The second thing I think is important is Representative Bernstad, I think it would be wonderful if you would reach out to student representatives and let them know that there are committees on the board and that they are welcome to join. That way, Vice President Thompson and I can have a more formal conversation about to which committees we might appoint them. And then in September at our public meeting, we can put forth a resolution to appoint our student representatives to any committees they may wish to join. I know we also have a task force coming from Aussie for literacy that we need to appoint a member to, and hopefully we'll know that information by the September public working session too, and can add that member appointment to a resolution at that time.
Yeah, so I can I'll probably just call them and then explain everything, and I'll reach out to, should I reach out to you and Vice President Thompson, or should I reach out to the committee chairs or Alex, or I don't know who?
Reach out to Vice President Thompson and Alex and I, and we'll go ahead and loop in our committee chairs.
Got it.
All these new processes we have to remind ourselves of that are new to some of us or that are recurring for prior members now that we're returning to in-person posture, but that's very exciting. All right, let's move on then, if there are no further questions for Representative Bernstad, to accountability and assessment. Dr. Patterson, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Madam President. The AA meeting met on the 22nd of July. We had a very robust meeting. All of the members were there, including yourself. Thank you for attending along with us, and the staffs that came along as well. We had a very robust conversation, kind of like a debrief about the votes that had taken place prior, just to kind of, say how we felt about, what came out of the vote, how we felt about, the votes that were taken by each individual. Each individual was able to kind of talk about their own votes that they cast and the reasoning behind that. We wanted to make sure that as a committee that we wanted to hear each other and why they voted the way that they did. So I thought that was very, very good for us to participate in that first and foremost, and you got to hear a lot of that conversation. And I advise anybody who would like to know why each member voted the way they did from our particular committee, go back and look at that, because it was very interesting and it gave me some insight as to why my fellow committee members voted the way that they did. We followed that up by talking about the engagement and building trust for the report card going forward in the fall. We want to make sure that it's not done in the same manner that it was done before, when they basically came to us with a pretty much designed kind of a format, so to speak, and we played with it around the edges. We have some concerns about that, but we're hoping and trusting that Aussie will make sure that we're not creating new information, because we had a lot of great information from the communities that we engaged prior to that went into our recommendations. And we want to make sure that that is heard, the voice of the people that we engaged, that goes into the design. So that was part of that conversation as well. And then we also had an awesome report from Mr. LaMonica about the well-roundedness schools and stuff. So that was a very good conversation as well, the memo. And we're just looking forward to all of the things that they're recommending in that to come out. And the last subject that we talked about was park. Looking forward to looking at alternatives to park. I know this is very much on the mind of Dr. O'Leary. So we are going to start that work as we turn toward that direction after we've gotten done with the accountability and the report card, but we want to make sure that is a priority for us as we go forward in the near future, okay? So that's basically the gist of our committee meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Patterson. Are there questions for the Accountability and Assessment Committee?
And of course, if any of the other committee members want to add something to that, you know, what we discussed at all.
Vice President Thompson?
So for the fall engagement session, will the session be on kind of finishing out the framework and the report card, or will it shift towards this focus on options for park?
We're more so looking, the first priority is about the report card. Is where we want to place our focus, because that's the next iteration and a very important part. Madam Vice President, we know that, again, as I stated, a lot of people have put input into that, not even understanding what we were doing with the amendments. They were thinking more so about the report card. So as that comes out, we want to make sure that the things that we've engaged with them is already part of some of the discussions, and then move from that point, not that we're starting from scratch.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Dr. Reed?
Yep, just wondering if we heard back from Aussie related to the indicators that drove the change. And I guess just pinging that as follow-up, because I'm still curious to know, what are those indicators?
Yeah, we did, and I sent an email.
They still haven't.
No, I forwarded the email in which they did respond. Let me pull it up and I can read it for the good of the order. So Dr. Reed had shared an email that asked about which indicators drove the change in the modeled change in school accountability scores that Aussie provided to the state board at the July working session. And Mr. Kramer from Aussie shared, "Good afternoon, President Sutter. Thank you for sharing this question. Because metrics are weighted differently, the increases and decreases are roughly proportional to those metric weights. Recall also that the proposed amendment adjusts these weights to increase the emphasis on growth. Additionally, indicator scores vary across schools, so there was a small amount of variation from school to school, i.e. there was not a single metric or even a few metrics that universally explained these differences." I'll make sure that this email goes out to the full membership, and perhaps we can even post it on Assembly. And I apologize, Dr. Reed, I did forward it after our last public meeting, but I sent it on the 25th of July.
Okay, yeah, I lost in my inbox, but thank you for reading it.
The amount of things that get lost in my inbox these days, I tell you. So I'll make sure that we share this out with all members, but the short answer is there was no clear answer as to which metric drove the totality of the score shift, but that it was both proportional in relation to the shift in the metrics and varied by school.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna leave it alone, but I guess I have a follow-up question, because it was really touted in that memo that there was, I guess, a shift for, like, you know, they were saying, what was it, schools serving most children at risk. So I was just kind of curious of, like, it seemed like they would kind of have, I don't know. I mean, I think it's just interesting that, like, they were like, oh yeah, these things have definitely shifted like 10 points. But okay, it seems like it's variance in what changes. I was just making sure that, like, did we just revote those indicators back in place, or like, were there even shifts, changes? I'm just kind of curious about, like, what I don't know, maybe I can follow up with them. I'm curious about like the schools that they said with at risk, like could they even highlight, even if it's variance, what were those indicators that they noticed? And I would be inclined to believe that there will be some sort of trend related to possible indicators that cause change. But
yeah, I mean, I think we can certainly ask Aussie again. I also think that the schools they modeled the data on were also sort of they were sample schools, not actual schools. So I think the question may be one that eludes us, because I think what we all really are wondering is what will happen when these new metric weights are placed on actual schools experiencing the actual year-to-year variations schools have, and which will vary in their success at recovery from all the various ways students suffered during the pandemic. So I think it's worth us following up with Aussie next time we have them before us. It may also be something the committee wants to invite Aussie to speak with them about at a future meeting. Any other questions for Dr. Patterson or any other comments on the committee report? All right, I will turn then to Vice President Thompson for the administrative committee report.
Okay, I am going to share my screen if I'm allowed to. That's my hint for let me allow me to.
I think that's
Yes. That's my responsibility. Hold on one second. And you already warned me about this, so I should have preemptively done this.
No worries.
All right. You should be good to go. And let's get the time clock restarted for Vice President Thompson too.
No worries. I plan to not take 10 minutes. That's my goal anyway. Especially not twice. That's way too much time. All right. Screen sharing. Okay. I think I made that as big as possible. Can everybody see my screen? It's hard to tell when you're the presenter.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, awesome. We'll also make sure this is posted to somebody. So we had our admin, some of the things in this admin report, which is why I will not take 10 minutes, have already been covered. But we had our admin committee report on July 27th. Myself, Diane Davis, Serena, the ombudsman, Representative Patterson, and Representative Sutter were present. We talked about ED hiring. We already got that update earlier in the meeting in Representative Sutter's remarks. One thing we're really excited about is the Sped Hub is still largely on track to launch September 15th. OSA has been doing a lot of back to school outreach. They flagged they have a lot of events in 7 and 8, but they actually are looking for more events in 4, 5, and 6. So if you know of events in 4, 5, and 6, please flag them for Dan and Serena because their members are out and about conducting outreach. And we are also on track and reviewing applications, or the Office of Student Advocate is for another member of their staff. And some of these things have already been covered, but we have the standards position coming on board in October, and we are receiving some guidance from DGS on hiring and contracting as far as how to approval and spending of some of the certification funds. I wanted to make sure I shared my screen and we talked about some of the things for spend down because we were alerted, thank you, Roma, that due to a couple of shifts in work and the fact that we were so thrifty up front, we have more money to spend down and we need to do so quickly than we were expecting to do. So we went back, we looked at work plans, we talked with, we asked committees to identify things, and these are the things that we came up with to spend down the rest of our money through October. One is of the back to school engagement event. You'll note that is actually a pretty large item. So we'll definitely be able to cover food and childcare. 2, we are actually outsourcing the board governance focus groups. And when I say outsourcing, we have identified a vendor to act as a facilitator. This was something that was initially in our work plan, and we thought we would not have the resources to do it. Now that we have the resources and given our capacity issues being a staff member down, we made the decision to keep the committee's work on track to outsource the focus groups to a vendor. 3, we're going to go ahead and pay for members who are interested in attending the NASB conference. 4, Representative O'Leary, this one is for you. We've long talked about, we're hoping we can time them to help with the outreach for the back to school events that we're doing, which should also help people lean into the topics that we are talking about. 3, a literacy 2-pager, getting that done. I will flag this DC History Day affiliate fee. This is with the contingency that we have someone else, some other agency can actually take on the capacity for coordination. But we do have a hole here for $2,500 if we need to pay the affiliate fee. And 4, we ask the staff if there are certain office needs we need to cover. So things like AV equipment, some of the subscriptions, Zoom Pro, all of that comes to about $4,000. Alex, tell me if I am missing anything or if any of these figures have changed.
Vice President Thompson, you are not missing anything. And that was a really wonderful report out.
I'm trying. Last couple things, and then I'll stop for questions. I'll also I posted this on SharePoint. We now have an admin committee folder. But we want to make sure that members and the SBOE are just going out and doing more outreach at events. A lot of times it almost defaults that we're not invited to have a table. We want to change that default. And when there are opportunities, making sure that we as members are flagging events for our sister offices. Sometimes there might be an opportunity to share. I know we not just have a small but mighty staff, but in real life, we have a small but mighty board. So an example of this was like I shared the table with OSA, with the Office of Student Advocate this Saturday, because why not? Like we can share a tent. We don't need a bunch of tablecloths. We can also take bathroom breaks. It's awesome. Sharing is caring. 3, we talked a little about the enhancement earlier in the meeting, so I'm not going to go through that in detail. I do want to flag that, and I can't remember if interim directors, you shared this, but one thing we're keeping an eye on is the mayor's legislation giving a cost of living increase for non-union staff that will affect our personnel estimates. And we're reaching out to get clarity on if that's something we need to allocate for, or if there's some provisions that were going to be made. And then finally, we are moving to increase our fellow pay. Currently, our fellows make, I believe, $17 an hour, which given the minimum wage rise, you can pretty much make it Chipotle. They are highly skilled and they are valuable. And so we have done a bit of research. Thank you to Alex and Roma, both for the research and raising this issue. And we're looking to increase their pay to $20 because we have been in the low end of the spectrum for comparable fellow projects. So that we hope to have that in effect, the group of fellows that will be starting in August and September. So sorry, fellows that are leaving us in August. Finally, you already know that our August 3rd working session is remote because we asked for votes on that. And we now have an update that we look forward to being back in our chambers. So I will stop speaking. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment so I can see people, because if not, I can't tell if people raise their hands. But do people have questions or comments? Yes, Representative Wattenberg.
2 things. One, on the DC history group, there was a discussion about having it handled. I think the Smithsonian was interested, and then John Paul left. So I'm just wondering what the status of those discussions are and where we think it's going to land, or.
Well, the status is that no one has actually dedicated a staff member to do coordination. So we looked into this a bit more. We are holding the funds because we can definitely afford the affiliate fee. But we're trying to work with some other education agencies, hoping someone will step up and do like the coordination of the schools and all the logistics, because we just can't dedicate that personnel at this time. And we want it to be a successful event. So we're happy to support it. But we also don't want it to be, we don't want to drop the ball on it either. So.
Right, no, and there was my understanding is that there was a conversation with the Smithsonian and they were interested.
No one has stepped up to say that no other agency, office, or organization yet has stepped up and said, yes, we will take this on.
But do you know if those conversations happen? I'm just trying to understand.
They're still happening, but that's what we need. I'm just telling you, that's the commitment we need. The conversations are still happening.
With that organization. I just want to make sure it didn't fall through. That's all I'm trying to understand. So it
No.
sounds like those conversations with that group are happening. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, and I'll just quickly to reiterate what Vice President Thompson said, like the conversations are actively happening. I was actually on a phone call last Wednesday with some of those entities. But as Vice President Thompson said, no other organization, agency, or entity has stepped up yet.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't going through. The second, my second question is about, I know that the ED job description cannot be changed because there's the moratorium, but there was a discussion about shifting some of the questions based on some of the issues that I had raised and maybe others that people submitted. So just want to check in on that.
I'll happily chime in here, Vice President Thompson. So I sent out an email before the admin committee last met that solicited from members whether there was any input they wanted to provide to do so. I did not hear any input from any members about the points you raised at the last working session, Representative Wattenberg. What the next opportunity for the full board to be involved will be the panelist interviews with the panel interviews with the finalists. So the admin committee will be involved in discussions of the screening interviews, but the full board will next be involved in the panel interviews with the finalists. So if you do have questions you want to make sure that we're considering adding to screening interviews, go ahead and send them our way to myself and Vice President Thompson and Caitlin Peng, and we'll bring that to the admin committee.
So I guess my question is, so I made the comments, I was pretty explicit, I think, in the comments about the kinds of things I thought should be pushed in. Do you also need me to send something beyond that?
I will say, Representative Wattenberg, you did make comments about things that were important to you, and I asked members to share items of importance to them. We did not list, because that discussion happened after the job was posted, it was inappropriate to use those items as a screening tool, meaning that none of the applicants were aware that those would be skills we were looking for in an applicant. So I was hopeful that maybe other members would chime in and say, yeah, those things mattered to me too, and we could start to think about ways to use them in the process. We just haven't heard anything from any other members. So I will reiterate that if members have thoughts about things they'd like to ask, we can certainly ask them in the panel interviews with the finalists, or we can put them to the admin committee to ask them if they'd like to ask them as part of the screening interview questions.
Well, so two things. One, I see the big timer and my time is up, and I know Representative Reed's hand is up. But two, I think what's also missing from this conversation is that one of the things we talked about as the admin committee is, are there other opportunities and do we need to explore other opportunities to address the type of capacity you're raising? Because no, it's not, like if I was a candidate and I didn't know that that was something looked for in the job, it's not fair to me if we now use that as a screening tool. That doesn't mean that we can't explore, like, is it as a board and like, are there other capacities we need? I actually think that should be part of our budget enhancement conversation. Like maybe it's a staff member, maybe it's a contract line item, maybe there are things, but I don't know. I'll speak both for myself and just and giving you some insight into the discussion was, I think there are a lot of different levers we can pull to get to the capacity you're talking about because it's important. But as of right now, our process hasn't changed and we haven't added those as screening questions.
So if I could just say one thing, when this ED position was first posted, I guess about 7 years ago, the needs of the board were very different. And to me, just having been here for those 7 years, it seems like at this point, we're clear on some of our roles, including really elevating the voice of our constituents and the voices of people who are in the schools, which to me means some sense of community engagement. And certainly people can hire staff to do that, but it does, certainly if I was involved in the hiring, that would be very relevant. So I hear what you're saying, and I would just suggest to other people on the board that if you think that makes sense, I hope you'll reach out, because that'll be, sort of directing the board for the next period. That's all.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do want to clarify one thing. You will be involved in hiring. You're just not, we just haven't reached that point in the process yet.
I meant in the questions.
Yeah. Well, again, if you have feedback or questions, send them our way. I want that is an honest invitation. Send them our way.
Yeah, no, that's what I was encouraging people to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Reed.
So this question is about in-person meeting. And I think we were talking about this a little bit, but over the pandemic, we touted a 200% increase in participation of folks coming to testify, and then a variety of people. Just curious to see how, with going back in person, could we still have a hybrid, some kind of option where people can, of course, they always can submit like written testimony, phone testimony, or I don't know if that's a thing. I know council does that one, but just making sure that we still have people have an option to utilize the tools they were using, because clearly it was working in regards to getting people engaged with our meetings. So I guess the question is, will there still be some kind of virtual element to our meetings for people to testify?
That's not something we've discussed. We literally just found out in the last 24 hours that we'll have access to our chambers again. And we don't know what the updates around what the capabilities of those chambers would be. So I wouldn't be able to answer that, but we're updating you as we know.
And I think I'll just add on, that's a thing that I would hope we can ask specifically, Mr. Ju, what will the capacity of the chambers be to integrate some sort of hybrid engagement? And once we know that, we can share back with board members, but we don't know that yet. And to my understanding, the executive setup is still present in the chambers as of today.
Correct.
Yeah, that is correct. And I don't think the executive is vacating until the middle to the end of August. And then I have a meeting set up with the Office of Cable Television, Media and Entertainment at the end of August, and then with DGS and the contractor in early September to actually take a look at the equipment that has been installed and updated. So I imagine we'll probably actually not have updates until the September working session related to what the capacities and capabilities will be. But I do understand and believe that former Executive Director Hayworth, that when he was working on the updates, that he was making updates with a hybrid posture in mind. And so it is my hope that I will walk in and see a chambers that has that capability. But again, I have no idea what the work scope was and what actually was done.
Yeah, I'd be worried. I don't even know if we'll be ready, and it'll be interesting to see if we're actually ready at the end of September. But
well, I think one thing I will just note that I think we're balancing is we've wanted to make sure we can continue the high level of engagement we've had with the public. We've also, each time we've surveyed board members, there has been a strong desire to be back in person. So I think that we want to balance those two things and figure out how to do both well. And I will say that the thing I think we've committed to is to definitely returning to our chambers in September. And if the hybrid posture is ready to go, Excellent. And if not, to Representative Wattenberg's point, figuring out how we remedy that as soon as possible. By that point, we'll be in the FY23 budget. So it'll be a different budget conversation because we have to expend all our funds, I think even before the 30th of September, right?
Yes, that is correct. And I will also note to this question about hybrid meetings, once the fiscal year 23 budget does come online on October 1st, the board was allocated a one-time enhancement or supplement of, I think, $50,000 to help us identify ways to host hybrid meetings. And so that is work that we can start exploring at the start of the fiscal year. And so if I think we approach the chambers in September, to President Sutter's point and to Representative Wattenberg's point, and it's not fully capable or able to host hybrid, once October 1st comes online, I think we would have the funds to procure additional resources or things to make sure that we can do it in the way that we want to encourage engagement is high at the levels that we've been seeing.
Awesome. Thank you all. Are there any members last call? If not, I am well over my time. So I'm going to relinquish the Zoom stage.
All right. Thank you very much, Vice President Thompson. Mr. Ju, did you want to add something else?
I did have one other thing to piggyback off of something that Representative Thompson raised. I do know that we're a little bit over time, but I thought that this would be a quick exercise that we could do as members, hopefully no more than 2 minutes. And so once I share this up on the screen, I will ask Darren to put a 2-minute timer up. But one of the things that we're doing with the WMATA ads is we are going to be having virtual digital ads in WMATA train stations. We're going to have taillight bus ads on buses. And then look at Dr. O'Leary's face right now. And we're also going to have interior bus ads as well. And so those things in that campaign will likely run from August 22nd through early September for a period of 4 weeks. But one piece of information that is still outstanding is identifying which metro station we would want our digital ads to appear in. And so I'm going to quickly share my screen. And then again, I will ask Darren to put 2 minutes on the screen. But we have the opportunity to place digital ads in really any of the metro stations. You will notice in this picture that there are like digital screens that will show an ad, and I think it's on a 10-second rotation. We have the opportunity to post these digital ads in about 10 to 12 onto about 10 to 12 different screens. And so this is where it becomes a little bit complicated because members will see in this table that there are a variety of stations and the numbers next to each station is the screen count. And so we can place digital ads in places so that the total is around 10. And so that could look something like, in Anacostia, Courthouse, Eastern Market, Federal Center, and Glenmont, because they all have 2 digital ad platforms and 2 times 5 would equal 10. Or if we wanted to put all of our eggs in one basket, we could say we want to do Union Station. It has 11 screens and we would be able to do that. Or we could also do, again, put our eggs in one basket and say we want to do Metro Center, which has 14, or Gallery Place, which has 17. And I think I have been given the go ahead by our vendor that even though that does exceed the 10, that like if we wanted to put all our eggs in one basket for one Metro Center, we could do that. But at this time, I wanted to get a sense from members related to what stations or how we might want to move forward with selecting kind of those 10 screens. And if members had thoughts, they can share them in the chat. They can take a look at this. Again, I don't want to occupy too much time on this exercise, but I thought it would be something worth discussing and doing.
Members, thoughts?
Yeah, I think that it would be a good idea if someone could just go through the list and scratch out the names of the Maryland, Virginia stations.
Yes.
Just so it would make it easier for us to differentiate. Like Petworth is called Georgia Avenue on here. And if we think about it, most people, I guess, that take the metro go up and down the escalators. So maybe we could get our best bang for the buck if we could just have at least one sign in 10 stations. Do you understand what I mean? I mean, like when I go from Petworth down to Marion Barry building, I go up and down the escalator.
Yep. So yeah, I think Representative O'Leary raises a valid point. Does the board see more value in scattering them across a variety of stations or putting them in one central location? Representative Bernstein?
I have two questions. So if a station has, I think I misunderstood. So like Gallery Place has 17 screens, right? If we decided Gallery Place, we wouldn't have to put them all in Gallery Place just because they have more than 10 screens, right? We could split them up.
No, so it's my understanding the way that this digital ad works is it goes on all of the screens in that given station. And so the way that our contract with the vendor has worked is they have said that we can put digital ads on roughly 10 screens.
Okay, so
go ahead.
Okay, so what I was gonna say is then I think we should split it up as much as possible because I think it doesn't make sense just to have them in Gallery Place because people go in through Gallery Place or they come out of Gallery Place, but typically on their commute to work, they don't go into Gallery Place and come out of Gallery Place, and that's true for every other station. So I think we should split it up as much as possible where, if we have the information for it, like where the most foot traffic would be, if that makes sense, like not physically in the thing, but like if more people in the morning take Columbia Heights than Courthouse, we should have them in Columbia Heights and split them up amongst where gets the most sorry, it's been a long day. Split them up amongst where gets the most foot traffic in all. And I do think it should remain central to DC because that's who our constituents are most of the time, except for people who are commuting out of DC into Maryland or Virginia.
Representative Wattenberg.
What's going to be on the ad? What's the message? Do we know?
So the message will largely be for members, if they remember the mailers that went out last year, it'll have a very similar message, I think. You know, how do you figure out who your member is? What is the state board? How could you sign up to testify? Here's a QR code for constituent feedback, those types of messages.
You know, I wonder if there's a way to use like a scan thing or something so that people can maybe add a list to, I mean, because we're really trying to do so much more around community outreach, and maybe this could be a way to get people to provide their names and email addresses so that we can reach out to them during events, you know, promote the fall engagement, et cetera. So that's all. I wonder if there's something very specific that we can connect to this.
Mr. Jew, if I might, I agree with Representative Wattenberg about the access to information about the fall engagement. Like if we can add in the date and location of the fall engagement as part of the advertisement, I think that would be ideal. I will say I have never scanned a QR code ad in Metro, so I don't know whether others have and feel like that might be a good way to build our outreach list or not. I'm curious to get input on that though. Representative Bernstein, are you responding to that?
Yeah, I think QR codes are a great way to get outreach. I know personally they work for me. Like I literally just scanned one at the Metro stop on my way home like 2 days ago. The only issue is I know normally QR codes are printed. And so I wonder if they're digital, would phones be able to scan them the same way, which is something we should check before we do a poster that has that. Because I know sometimes with screens and like taking a picture of a screen, you can like see the pixels. So I'm not sure if it would work. So I think that's a great idea if it can work, but I'm not sure how it works.
Got it. That may also be generational divide, scanning QR code on advertisements. Representative, Vice President Thompson.
So another point of reference that actually might be helpful for people, OSA and the Ombudsman have had ads. They're going to be similar to that, as in like kind of evergreen, like here, if you didn't know our office existed, like here's what we do, type of things. I do worry about because of the time frame of it, depending on what date we pick for the fall engagement, it might be out of date.
Got it.
It's a 4-week run and it starts August 22nd. So that's something to put on the table. I will say that the only time I've seen a virtual QR code, honestly, was during the Super Bowl, when they had the one for one of those cryptocurrencies. And you could actually go up to the TV and scan. I don't know if people remember that commercial, or maybe I don't watch the Super Bowl. I feel like everybody else has watched it, but it actually was one of the most successful ads during the Super Bowl. They got huge numbers. You could scan it, and I think you got like $5 in Bitcoin or something. But I do. It's worth asking, just like if it's possible. Yeah.
All right.
Representative Bernstein, is that another point?
Yes, I'm going to turn off my camera while I speak because my internet connection just got really bad. I'll turn it back on when I'm done. But I think Representative Chang raises a great point in the chat that a lot of lower cost Androids don't scan QR codes. And I think generally, like best practice anyways, is just to be most accessible, make sure that even if we have a QR code, all the information is easy to read and easy to understand, even if you don't go to the link that the QR code has. So that way, even if people don't have like internet, don't have phone access, whatever, they can still access the event information. So yeah.
Super helpful. Vice President Thompson, is that another comment? All right, Mr. Ju, what else do you need from us on this tonight?
I don't think there's anything else at this time. I appreciate members' engagement on this, and we'll continue to move forward on making an appropriate decision. So thank you all.
All right, thank you, Vice President Thompson. Thank you, Mr. Ju, for that slot in. I did have a request from Representative Chang if we could shift education standards up. So unless there's any objection, Dr. Reed, I'm gonna have Representative Chang go next, then we'll come to advocacy and outreach and return for board governance. Is that okay?
Works for me.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Reed. Mr.
Thank you, Dr.
Chang.
Reed. Great. So on the Education Standards Committee side, we got a chance to learn more about the literacy research being conducted by 2 American University graduate students of President Sutter's, who are helping us answer some questions we've been asking about literacy education in DC. And I am excited or look forward to sharing those findings with everyone and all the board members after we get to hear them next week. We're also building a family-facing toolkit to help navigate the literacy resources that are currently available in DC. And we have been exploring how we might codify a standards revision process, which is something that Giselle had been leading. Thank you, Giselle. And about which Representative Bernstadt convened a panel earlier this year. It's something that we will continue learning about, exploring what other states are doing, and have a proposal for you all at some point. And there will be no committee meeting this month, so we'll have more to say after September.
Thank you, Representative Chang. Are there any questions for Representative Chang? All right, I'm super excited about this literacy work, and I can't wait when we get back from summer and keep going on it. All right, Dr. Reed, coming to advocacy and outreach next.
Yep. Let me pull up my notes. I had them up and then they went away. 1 second. I should have did that when Representative Chang was speaking. Okay. So where did I send them? Oh, where'd they go? Hold on. Let's see to Malayo. Nope. There they go. Okay. Thank you for resetting the clock. All right. So we met on Friday, the 22nd of July. Of course, in our old business component, the sexual assault resolution passed, but that's kind of the starting point for some of our work around sexual assault in schools. We'll be holding a panel at one of our regularly scheduled outreach and advocacy committee meetings, because at least we'll already have SBOE members there. We'll just have to recruit sister agencies. I would like feedback. I know we said September, but either September or October, as who was it? Tamika Bowden from PCSB has information to share related to their revamp process, and it'll be fresh off the presses because they meet on the 19th of September. I'll save that for Q&A, or if you can put in the chat if you have any strong feelings either way related to should our sexual assault panel be in September or October. What else? We agreed that we will share with the sister agencies invited our the resolution, and then ask them for data points so they can be ready. We also talked about our family engagement. We do have the family engagement form. I need to forward that to folks. It had to be transitioned from Google Docs to our new Microsoft suite. And I saw a message from Caitlin that is ready. So we'll forward that to everyone. What else? Our next steps are, and we submitted a proposal for fall engagement. Our next steps are to sign up parents throughout the summer as you're doing your engagement sessions, who might be interested in deeply, getting into parent engagement topic, and then crafting our fall engagement presentation, which has kind of already been done at a previous session that we had. We basically turned what would have been some questions that we were going to do in our community outreach to our presentation. So that's pretty much the family engagement piece. New business, of course, the resolutions from the public meeting that came up. We agreed that we should do some PR, the State Board of Education should do some PR related to the impact of our Essa and attendance resolutions. Representative Gazoy is going to follow up related to the implications of the new attendance rule related to court-appointed youth. Am I out of time? Oh, I ran out of time. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. We also had Representative Thompson doing some work on HVAC, and kind of got a feel from the committee related to the issue, and should we do something broader related to conditions of schools or focus on HVAC. So Representative Thompson introduced that topic, and it's going to be following up. Representative Gasoy mentioned youth and violence, and she introduced the topic at the meeting, but she wants to do some more follow-up related to that topic. And then start of school was a topic, and we talked about how can the board address back to school advocacy issues more uniformly, meaning some of you will get outreach from different people, and just making sure we have some commonality in how we respond to issues that are raised to us, which I think, if I heard correctly in somebody's report, it seems like Malayo may be doing some work related to common questions. So that was advocacy and outreach. I'm not sure if anybody has any questions. I do want to pose the question again for the sexual assault panel. Do folks have a preference for the September 3rd Friday, or the Friday after our public meeting, or October? I'm seeing September. So yeah, you can just put that in the chat. That's it. And any committee member, anything else?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Reed. Any questions for Dr. Reed, or any comments from other committee members? All right. Seeing none, thank you very much, Dr. Reed, and thank you for the continued work on both the family engagement piece and the roundtable with other district agencies about sexual assault and harassment. Let's turn to board governance. Vice President Thompson, it sounds like we have some staff supporting this presentation.
Yes. So we have a special guest, which is why we have 10 minutes. Special guest being our beloved Dr. Darren Fleischer. We just closed the board governance survey, July 30th. So thank you to everyone who participated. Thank you to everyone who shared it out. Darren, our full committee report is on Assembly, but I want to make sure that we take the time for Darren just to present a bit on who took the survey, so people know, and like some of our lessons learned about outreach engagements and the metrics we set. So I will stop talking and turn it over to Darren.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
So just to reiterate, the purpose of this survey was to just get residents' experiences with education governance or the education system, as well as ways they'd like to see improvements to that system. We got about 1,500 responses with about a 75% pass rate, not pass rate, a 75% response rate. We also got 61 responses on our Spanish version of the survey. I also want to note that about 500 people indicated their interest in participating in the focus group for the English survey, as well as about 16 respondents on the Spanish survey. And so emails have gone out to those folks. I'll touch on that in a little bit. I did want to share with you the demographics of this. And so I would say about 1,000 completed the survey. And so what you should see on your screen is just a breakdown or a dashboard of who responded to this survey. Can you all see this dashboard?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So the majority of respondents came from were parents or guardians, and the next one down would be residents that were not grandparents, relatives, parents or guardians, or students. We had about 30 students who did respond to this, and about 159 non-DC residents. For services that students receive, such as English language learner services, 504 plans, IEPs, the majority did not. Either family members or students said that they did not receive any services. For school type, majority was DCPS, parents or family members or students, and about 25%, a lot less, were DC public charter schools. We did have about 90 private school families respond to this, as well as I know we've discussed homeschooling before in the past. About 6 homeschooling families have responded to this. For children's school level, the majority was K through 5 families, followed by middle and high school, and pre-K 3 to 4. So not too bad with those numbers. Now we go to what ward they lived in, not what ward the school was in, but ward of residency. Ward 3 by far had the most responses, so 375 people filled that out, followed by wards 4 and 5. The lowest were wards 2, 8, and 1, and so we could have had a bit more from that. And I'll go into where we really didn't. We wanted more representation, but just as a note for this, we wanted overrepresentation from wards 5, 7, and 8. For race, ethnicity, again, majority white, 774 out of 1,500, close to 1,500 people filling this out, compared to 429 Black or African American. Prefer not to answer was 153, followed by Asian, American, Indian, so on and so forth. So that did not include Hispanic or Latinx majority was non-Hispanic or Latinx. We had about 154 who said that they were. But this, so this didn't really meet where we wanted to get from the Hispanic Latinx community. How did you come across this survey? I did want to note that a lot of the respondents came across this through social media, where it says other, most of them said, or over half said they received this survey via email. And so that's just some of the demographics from this. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but I did want to note a few other things. So again, where we did not meet is wards 5, 7, and 8. The race ethnicity goals for students, we wanted to hear a bit more from students on this, as well as more from public families from public charter schools and those receiving student services such as IEPs, 504s, and so on. And so I appreciate Representative Chang's interest in tracking where we're getting least amount of engagement. I think this is something that we should just sort of keep in mind for any future surveys or community outreach. And I also want to note that we were working with the Office of Racial Equity to help us just get an idea of meaningful community engagement. Ebony Rose, would you, or Representative Thompson, would you like me to touch on the focus groups, where we're at with those?
Yes, maybe you should see if people have any questions about the survey first.
Yes.
Representative O'Leary, is that a hand?
My hand.
Okay.
I have two questions. In the survey of ethnicity, it was like over half of the people were white. But there was no place where someone could identify themselves as Latino. Is there, because there wasn't a choice of that, and it sort of, I mean, did you find that the majority of the people that answered the survey were because you had like the majority, a lot of people said that they found out on their computers or whatever. And we know from, especially since COVID, that there's a huge disparity in the numbers of people who check their computers every day in the city and work on their computers or even have computers. So is that a false positive kind of thing?
It's a great question. That's a great question. I'm going to note that because we do have a focus group. So perhaps that's something we could ask offhand. I'm going to be touching base with the vendor tomorrow about that. For the question asking respondents, if they are Hispanic, Latinx, that was separate from the race ethnicity question. So we do have
but there's a difference. There's a difference in identifying yourself as Latinx and identifying yourself by race.
So what we could do, I could look for a breakdown of who responded to the race ethnicity question and those who answered the Hispanic Latinx. I think that answers that. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's a good start. I know you're running out of time. I also have a question about children, the number of children from the same household. I mean, if at one time I had 3 children in different grades, did you break that? What do they call it? Disaggregate that to find out if there were children from high school children and middle school children and elementary school children and pre-K children from the same house rather than those being separate numbers for the children. I think that's important.
We did not, but that will be captured in the notes from tonight. And
Okay.
I'll
Thank you.
definitely keep that in mind. Thank you.
I would request that we keep going with the questions from members about the survey, then we can turn to the focus groups, even though the time is expired. I think it's important that folks get to ask their questions.
Okay, Representative Reed, and thank you for the extra time.
How do we, I just have a question. How do we define locally? For the, how did you hear about it? I'm curious about that category.
I don't think we had a definition. I guess it was
Or then how do you know
up
to
for interpretation.
locally? Oh, okay. I was just, well, what, I'm just curious, like what was that? Was that like the QR code being posted? I'm just,
I think that's how we, yeah, it would be what I considered like they would see it around town.
Yeah.
Because there was one where they heard from a friend, so that would be out. I mean, while that's local, it'd be hearing from a friend. So yeah.
okay.
Any other questions? All
My
right.
question, I think,
Oh, yes.
tips into the focus group, like segue, which is given that this survey is not representative of the city, right? It oversamples for Ward 3 and it oversamples white people. How, if at all, are we using the focus groups to help remedy the way we can get the kind of information we want that is more representative of who lives in the district?
Great question. And I'm going to lean on Darren to help answer this. So as Darren shared, we did set goals in conjunction with advice from the Office of Racial Equity. They actually have been a wonderful thought partner with this for a bunch of reasons that I'm not going to go into, but they definitely deserve their flowers. And so does Darren in being able to work with them. While we did not reach our goal, which was 2,000 people and oversampling in certain subgroups, we did get a robust enough sample that we can actually now oversample in the focus group. So we can lean very heavily into who participates in the focus groups. And we definitely have a large enough sample to disaggregate the data in our responses. Darren, tell me what I'm missing.
That was great. I do want to add to that that we do have a meeting with DC Public Charter School Board, Tamika Bowden, tomorrow. They also have a survey out and are facing very similar challenges that we do. And so we're going to have a debrief with them on just best practices and moving forward. Some of the questions and comments that come up tonight, I'll touch base with them on just how to best remedy that going forward.
And can I say one more thing? I don't know if this is a legacy hand from Representative Wattenberg or not, but despite the fact that we didn't reach the ambitious goals we set for ourselves, we definitely having 1,200 responses is awesome. We like that's actually a really large lift, and so it's really good the number of responses we got, especially given going into this. We knew, as I have said many times, this is not the sexiest topic. So it's one of the reasons we set some metrics for ourselves up front, so we can determine how to move forward and when to move forward. I'm going to go to Representative Wattenberg and then Representative Reed, and then of course I'm going to let Darren share out just more about the focus groups, because I also anticipate that'll help answer some questions. Oh, and Representative Patterson, Representative Wattenberg.
Yeah, so question on how we report this out. So, because to the points made, we have a lot of people, we have enough people in different groups to disaggregate. We have enough people in different groups, I think, to sort of balance out the sample in this. So what I'm wondering is when we report the overall results, can we balance that out so that there's never going to be a report out that will be so non-representative. In other words, like pollsters weight their samples before they report out, I believe. Can we do that? Do we have the kind of the ability to, the technical knowledge to do that?
I think you're asking me if in our analysis, we're gonna overweight responses. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, that would be a good way to say it. Yes.
Yes, so we will do that, and our analysis will also include, because that's why we're actually keeping the questioning largely consistent with the focus group, to add the qualitative aspect of data collection. That will also be overweighted with participants that are like from 5, 7, and 8, receive services, our grandparents, might be multilingual learners, like that is our absolute intention.
Right. And that the survey itself will be reported out in a way that's weighted.
Both, I'm saying both.
Okay, that's it. That's fine. Good.
So can I ask a question about how we're going to accomplish that? So, because what I think I'm hearing is that what we just saw on the screen is not the way we will report out the results. And prior to reporting out the results, we will seek to do some statistical rebalancing of responses from the public. And so my question is, sort of, what resources are we putting towards that? Is that something our staff is doing? Is that something the folks who are helping us with focus groups are doing? Like, how are we going to explain that methodology? How are we going to do that? And when should the public expect to see that different display of results?
So I think we're going to lean most heavily on weighting from the focus groups, because that will be the qualitative analysis. I think we had hoped we could do both, but I think it's actually a question of if we have, and working with Darren, if we have the technical expertise to do the weighting on the survey. If we don't have the technical expertise, we're not going to do it because that would be wrong. That's going to right. So we can't. But it's a question of if we have the technical expertise to do that. But that is our hope. So we'll see. And we definitely update when we report out on like what we were able to do. I want to go to Representative Patterson because he was patient enough to let President Sutter take her prerogative and to listen through everybody else's questions.
No problem. Thank you, Madam Vice President. I applaud you guys and everything that you guys did here. I know a lot of work went into this. And then I look at the figures that come from my home ward, mine and Dr. Reed's home ward. And I don't think that's for lack of effort, because I know that I saw a lot of postings. I saw different efforts that were being made. But I do want to kind of get the question, or beg the question is, what are we going to change going forward when we do these type of surveys, when we have set goals and we see they're not being met, to get the respondents from certain communities that need to have more voice, because apparently it's not working. All things being equal, Ward 3 turned out, they did what they did, and and it's evident here. But then you see a ward that really needs to be represented and weigh in on an issue, and they're not. And it's not for lack of effort, because I saw effort. I did a whole midday talk on it and did it on screen in the middle of the day myself. And I applaud the staff for actually hitting me up and saying, Jacques, can you send this out on your social media and things like that. So I know everybody worked really hard, but what are we going to do? Well, I'm hoping we do something differently whenever we meet these crises, where the communities that need to respond, we're doing something just a little bit different to meet them where they are and get the type of responses that we need. It's more of a statement than a question.
No, I mean, it's an excellent statement. So that was one of the reasons we wanted to set some transparent metrics up front. Instead of just saying, hey, we got a huge response and we're declaring success. Because I do think that the board has come a long way, both like just the staff and like the way they go about things, the board members, and putting in a lot of effort into getting things out into the community. And then the next step of that will be like is that now, like, are we represented? Like, who are we talking to? Like, how do we get closer to the margins, right? Because we haven't quite achieved that. So I think this kind of starts that conversation. Like we were very intentional in saying, like, if everything goes magically, we will oversample certain populations. We need 2,000 responses. Like if we actually looked at that against some of our other like engagements and survey responses, we would probably see that we actually did really, really well. And we can see where we have fallen short. So we can now have a conversation about how do we, what do we need to do differently? And sometimes what do we need to do more of, or what do we need to stop doing to rectify that delta? So I'm actually, while I'm not pleased that we didn't meet our goal, I am pleased that we knew enough to say, all right, like, what is it we need to accomplish? And we can start to have we can do the autopsy, like we can do the postmortem of how we do better for next time. Yeah. And when I say next time too, it's good that we have kind of chunked. This is a process because part of next time can be feedback to the draft recommendations. So I'm excited about the challenge, to do better, to do even better and be even more inclusive. So I'm going to stop talking for real this time. And I'm going to let Darren talk about the focus groups because we are way over our allotted time, but I appreciate all of the questions, the engagement and the feedback. Darren.
Thanks. So for the focus groups, we have a vendor that we're working with. We're going to meet with them tomorrow to go over the logistics around just things like the questions that will be asked, and a lot of them will mirror the survey. And I shared with them both the survey questions and the responses from the survey participants. So we're going to go over that. We also have a Spanish a vendor that will be a Spanish translator. So we'll have 2 days next week. Wednesday will be the English one. Hopefully the Spanish vendor will sit in on that, listen in on that. And then Thursday we'll have our Spanish speaking group, focus group. And so we are putting together those focus questions and we'll more to come on that. I do want to give out a huge shout out to Roma for helping with those vendors and getting a really tight turnaround on that. So we have our vendors, we are working with them. Also, in terms of who will be participating, that goes again to Representative Wattenberg's point on overrepresentation and just making sure that there is overrepresentation in those groups, and also making sure that people have access to these focus groups. So I've worked with the vendor on the best times of day. So they'll be later in the evening around between 6 and 8 o'clock in the evening. They said those were probably the better times for them. I do have to note, in case I forget, that we are really low on Spanish speaking families and students for the Thursday focus group. I've reached out to community organizations. I'm still waiting to hear back from a few. I've shared an email today, but I am hoping to get more from those. We've heard back from 2 Spanish-speaking families or students so far that showed interest and ability to participate on Thursday. We've heard back from about 50 of the 500 participants that I emailed that filled out the survey and showed interest. 52 of them said that they would like to participate in the focus group. Again, I have to break that down by wards 5, 7, and 8, race, ethnicity, school level, students, making sure that at least one student is part of that focus group, as well as DCPS, public charter schools, just the school type as well. So I'll have that ends tomorrow at 5 p.m. That form closes, and then we could select who will be participating, and I'll share that out with the committee members. Are there any questions, or is there anything I might have missed that I can cover?
I think this is awesome, Darren. I really appreciate all the work you and Roma and the staff have put into making this happen. I really want to commend Vice President Thompson, the leadership on this work to include the Office of Racial Equity, to set a target goal for the engagement, to then sort of dissect and debrief how we did and how we didn't do. Like, I think this is a model for how we should do all of this engagement work with the board going forward. And I appreciate, there was a joke made earlier about how many doctors we had on the call, but I appreciate that we have so many folks in the room who have research expertise who can weigh in on this, both on our staff and in our membership. And I appreciate Dr. Reed's suggestion, which was made in the chat, so I'll voice it for the public, that if we don't feel like we can statistically rebalance the survey results, highlighting responses from the target groups of interest as sort of a focus over what we heard from the survey would be a great idea, and as we report that out to the public. So there's also a great shout out in our chat to Susie Schlossberg, our policy fellow, who's been leading on the survey report. Kudos to you, Susie, and to our policy fellows for all the amazing work that you're doing on helping our staff really take this data and information that the committee members are requesting and making it available for all of us to see and use. 2 more reports to go, team. So I'm going to thank Vice President Thompson and Dr. Fleischer for their report out, and we're going to shift now to teacher practice and support.
Good evening again. Our committee met with Mary Levy last month. We had a fruitful meeting with her, learned a lot about her research on teacher retention, on the last retention report. All of that is on Simbly, so I'm not going to go over that. It was really helpful. We're going to be using that as we meet, hopefully, if we can get everyone to respond when we come back in September with Aussie, with DCPS, and with the DME to find out the numbers at the beginning of school. As we all have heard, there have been more teachers have left the system this year than it's ever happened before in the history of the school systems. So that information we're going to use to formulate, thanks to Representative Parker, a resolution which we will bring forth in our next public meeting about trying to find out more information, the real information about why teachers leave, how many teachers have left, and how many vacancies there are in our schools as they begin school at the end of this month. We also are going to be meeting with the systems about the preparation of teachers in our universities and colleges in the area, and try to find out more information about what the systems are doing to communicate with those schools so that we can get people from those schools to come and teach in our schools in Washington, D.C. We will not be meeting this month, but we will be really ready to meet in September and make sure that our systems are aware of their shortcomings and how to fix them. Thank you.
I have no doubt you will be, Dr. O'Leary. Thank you for that report out. Questions for Dr. O'Leary and the committee? All right, seeing none. External committees.
The Everyday Counts data committee met. I unfortunately was not able to attend that meeting, but I did have our policy fellow, Kevin LaMonica, quickly review the materials. I know he had some high level points that he wanted to share out with you all, and I think might follow up via email too, but I'll turn it to Kevin quickly.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I do have a couple, for the sake of time, I'll keep this very high level, and then I will follow up with everyone tomorrow morning with more specific details, including some actual data points to kind of contextualize some of the key highlights from the slide deck that I reviewed. Overall, for school year 2021-2022, chronic absenteeism was lowest among in-person students and highest among hybrid students. And in-person chronic absenteeism was relatively the same across sector, sector being charter school versus DCPS. Public charter schools, hybrid was notably higher than DC public schools hybrid students. For school year 2021 and 2022, there was a jump in CFSA received referrals by the agency from the previous school year, despite the number of students actually referred slightly decreasing, and the number of students required to be referred also significantly decreasing. So that was notable. And then obviously CFSA referrals are for students ages 5 to 13, and court social services division referrals happen for students ages 14 to 17, and public charter school sent significantly less CSSD referrals this school year than the previous school year. And that is those were the high level notable key points I noticed in the slide deck. Obviously, again, I will be following up with everyone tomorrow morning with more detail, because obviously I just ran through that really quickly and without a lot of context. So hopefully an email follow-up will be clarifying for all of you, and I can obviously be reached if you have follow-up questions based on that. So yeah, thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mr. LaMonica. Dr. Reed?
The Research Practice Partnership is actually meeting tonight at the same time in one of those rare overlaps of meetings, but I've been promised an update, and I'll be sure to forward to board members when I get an update of what happened this evening.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Reed. The NASB Government Affairs Committee met yesterday, so I'll provide a quick update. There were two things I think worth noting from the U.S. Department of Education. One is new guidance around school discipline for students with disabilities, specifically avoiding the use of discriminatory discipline. So the Department of Education released guidance on that, and that is available on their website. That was done in mid-July. I'm happy to share out more notes from this meeting in writing, but like I said, it happened yesterday late afternoon. The other update is that there was a Dear Governor's letter from the Secretary on student mental health. Two important things worth noting from that letter. The Department of Ed is going to have applications for programs dedicated to increasing school-based mental health capacity. These will be competitive applications released in the fall. So I will make note for us to follow up with Aussie about the possibility of DC looking into this, as we know that school-based mental health is something we've heard from constituents again and again. The other thing is a reminder to governors, and I think for all of us, that there is a new national mental health hotline, 988, and that has now been launched. It was launched on July 16th, so that anyone experiencing a mental health crisis can call 988 in the same way that you would call 911 for a health or other kind of emergency. So that was also in the letter, and I thought worth highlighting. Any other external committee updates? All right, seeing none. We are concluding our committee reports. Thank you all for the really valuable engagement, both in our discussion of the budget and how our funds will be expended, our fall engagement planning, and our discussion about the governance survey. Super exciting work that the board is engaging in as we head into this brief summer light process. As a reminder to the viewing public, the State Board will not hold a public meeting in August. The next public meeting of the State Board will be held in person on September 21st. We welcome everyone to tune in to our September 7th working session. We'll have more details about our public meeting, including any possibility for a hybrid engagement, and we'll be sharing more details about our fall engagement with the public. Seeing no further business before the State Board, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vice President Thompson and Dr. O'Leary. Can I ask for the yays and nays? Sorry, this meeting's got a little longer than I expected either. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. Excellent. This meeting of the State Board is adjourned at 7:37 p.m. on August 3rd, 2022. Enjoy your time away, folks. Hope to see you all soon.
See you after school starts.